Hi Jeff, thanks for taking time to do this. Just a couple of quick questions for you about legal issues in higher education. First of all, your role is Associate Director for Compliance. So what does that mean, and why is that an important role to have in the financial aid office?
The role of the Associate Director of Compliance is one that's new here to Clemson, and it's one that over the course of the past 3 to 5 years, a lot of larger universities have started utilizing or putting in their office. Compliance is an important part of financial aid, both for federal, state, and university policies. So again, it's one of those roles that it's really difficult for several people to share in it. It's more important to have a single person or a single point of contact within an office to be that compliance person, to be the go-to person for compliance issues, whether it be federal guidelines, state guidelines, but also let that compliance person, in my role, also be a trainer. So when it's time to discuss new regulations, new policies, I'm usually looked at as the person to do those.
Great. What resources do you use to help make those tough decisions, those tough legal or ethical decisions that you encounter on a regular basis?
Our professional organizations have a lot of resources. It's called NASFA. It's the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. They have everything from a student aid handbook to the compilation of federal regulations to all kinds of different tools to be able to utilize to help me with compliance. So when I get asked a question about loan eligibility or Pell Grant eligibility or whatever, I can go back to those regulations at any point in time. From an ethical standpoint, NASFA also has what's called a code of conduct, and it was something that was created not that long ago, probably three to 5 years ago now. That is, if you're a member of NASFA, you are also saying that you agree to the code of conduct, and in that is a standard as far as ethics and how you perform your job, not only to the students and families that are expecting financial aid, but also how you handle yourself in the profession, and that's why that's so important. I also look at regulations from the state side. We have a very extensive policies and procedures manual here in the office that covers a lot of our office policies with university scholarships and endowments. And of course, it's always good to have discussions with your colleagues, those that are at similar schools and sometimes those that are not, that have lots of years of experience, that we can talk to each other and kind of bounce ideas off each other and kind of work towards best practices.
Do you think that there are certain legal or ethical issues that are faced in the financial aid office which are different from those faced on other on-campus offices?
I do, and I think it kind of dovetails a little bit with number 4 with your next question too. So let me try to keep them separate. I think from what's different about financial aid that say is different from the registrar's office or from student development or things like that is not only are there social and cultural issues, but a lot of times those social and cultural issues have impacts on how we award our aid. And because we are the center, the clearinghouse, if you will, for federal aid, there's a federal philosophy on that, there's a state philosophy on that, and there's a university philosophy on that. So trying to make all those entities happy is sometimes a little, and making the student happy at the end of the day is somewhat of an ethical dilemma. I would say that in doing that, we also try promote equity in how we award our funds across the campus, and making sure that while many may think we have this unlimited pool of funds, that's simply not true. There's this finite amount of money that we try to equitably promote to get the best recruiting class we can, but also maintain our standards as far as retention of our current student body as well.
And so what do you believe are some of the most important legal or ethical issues which are facing financial aid or even student affairs as a whole?
From a national perspective, there's a lot of conversation right now about what's the definition of a family, what's the definition of marriage, same-sex marriages, even conversations around students as far as transgender students, and what that looks like when you are applying for federal aid. So a lot of that has changed now. Just 2 years ago, it was definition of a parent on the FAFSA was mom and dad, and now that's changed to same-sex marriages and all as well, and even asking for parents' information even though they're divorced. So there's been a lot of change going on with that, and the FAFSA's kind of had to be reactive to the FAFSA, had to be reactive to the things that are happening socially and culturally in the United States. The other thing I would mention too is it kind of, we as a nation, we talked about this a lot more probably in the last year or so than we are currently, but that's student loan debt and the overall concept of financial literacy, and certainly my opinion that students aren't financially literate and need to be, but also how does that play out for colleges to decide, or even if they should decide, how much a student should borrow and for what reasons. Right now, we really can't limit that unless the student gets to their cost of attendance. But at this point, there's some discussion going on about maybe schools taking on a little bit more risk sharing with student loans and being able to limit certain groups of students and how much they can borrow. So that's going to be something from a legal as well as an ethical issue, how we handle that in the future.
And what advice do you have to new professionals about legal issues and compliance and ethics and so forth who are just coming into the higher ed field?
I wrote down one word for that, and that's training. I think what happens, and I've seen it time and time again as a trainer, is that schools don't invest enough in their new people to get out, or even through webinars or whatever in their office, to learn more about the profession and to learn more of it from all different angles, not just their own little set of responsibilities, but a little more holistic type approach. I found that very helpful starting out, and I think it's important for everybody that is starting out to be able to learn not only what they do on a day-to-day basis at their job, but also what others are doing and all as well. So, and when they feel like they're bumping into a legal dilemma or ethical dilemma, to discuss that with others. And, and training is important, but when you're out training and you're sitting beside somebody, network. And again, financial aid folks are really great about sharing their experiences. So network and get to know people at other schools across your state and across the country, because more than likely they've hit that same dilemma from time to time.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking time to do this. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.